Hello and welcome to Manibil. Essentia Foundation, or the website, has just updated or recently with an article on free will, apparently written by Mr. Bernardo Kastrup. And I want to take some time and try to deconstruct it, though it feels very much like an abstract juggling of abstract terms and sort of more or less fallacious kind of thinking in general about the idea of free will, right? And I might update you on what I consider free will, or what I would refer to when I talk about free will as we go along, or maybe at the end of the thing here, right? But because I have been threatened earlier for deconstructing stuff on the Essentia website, I've been threatened with murder, basically, for trying to deconstruct their philosophy. And I got this mail back in 2022 when I did the deconstruction of the videos on the Essentia Foundation on YouTube, which is sort of the general idea of an analytic idealism. I attempted to deconstruct it sentence by sentence, but was told that they didn't want that. And that if I kept doing it, they will threaten me with murder using the state. They don't say it explicitly, but you can read the quote here, the mail I got from Essentia, and what they intended to do to me if I kept doing what I did, right? And that's why I edited my videos down to half size, because that's what they would, they would be okay with. So I did that under protest, of course, right? Because that's not a good philosophical discourse. And apparently they don't want any philosophical discourse, at least not someone who is critical of their philosophy. And that says a lot to me, right? They will probably say something: you are not capable, you don't have the papers, you are not an academic, you are not this, that, and the other, therefore you are not allowed to criticize us. Therefore we have to push back against you, so you won't inflict this stupid criticism on somebody else, because we are the masters of philosophy over here in Essentia, and we can't have people like you criticizing us. Something like that, right? Well, that just encouraged me to keep going, right? And I've been doing a lot of deconstruction of Bernardo Kastrup lately, and whenever he comes up with something I find to be stupid, well, I'm going to deconstruct it, right? That's what any decent philosopher would do, I would think, right? I wouldn't want to. I mean, it's like I'm sitting here thinking out loud. Basically, that's what I'm doing, right? It helps me think if I talk at the same time, for some reason, which is not, so kind of unlike me in the past, right? But I'm like, when I deconstruct it, there's some part of my mind that seems to be ignited, or that where certain kinds of thoughts appear because I'm talking and deconstructing and philosophizing and presenting philosophy at the same time. I don't know exactly what it is. I can't put my finger on it at this point. But sometimes it seems like I find a lot of problems in other people's philosophy when I deconstruct it sentence by sentence this way. And that's one of the reasons why I do it, because it helps me both understand the philosophy and the shortcoming of the philosophy, other people's philosophy, and it helps me get to a better philosophy of my own, right? At least I'm bouncing it against my own philosophy this way. This one, as I said, is about free will. And to avoid getting shot on the account of Essentia Foundation, I have shortened it down to under the half size of the article on the Essentia webpage. You can go there and check it out for yourself. And I'll just comment with what I have, left myself with. I don't want to get shot, but it's sort of, it's not worth it trying to deconstruct their weird philosophy and risk getting shot by some government somewhere, right? It's not worth it. But I want to get across some comments on this philosophy, and this is the way to do it, in my opinion, right? Okay, let's dive in. First off, it says that at the level of universal subjectivity, the question of free will is a meaningless red herring, argues our executive director. Okay, so who's actually writing this, right? Is this some sort of ghost writer, or what would it? What's that called? And this our executive director is like the supreme leader Kim Il Kastrup. Our supreme leader has spoken. We have to obey the supreme leader. It really rubs me the wrong way, right? Who the hell are you writing this shit? Our executive director has spoken, right? I have to extend this because I'm a fucking stupid robot, right? At the level of universal subjectivity. Okay, so you're bringing in the big guns in the first paragraph, right? So you need to have some prior understanding, universal subjectivity, right? You have to have gone through, apparently, the whole course on analytic idealism in order to understand what it means by universal subjectivity. Okay, fair enough. So it's sort of preaching to the choir. You have to have prior understanding in order to read this. So this is for the invited, the initiated. It's the congregation. It's the priest, the executive director, talking to his congregation, right? The question of free will is a meaningless red herring. Well, it cannot be meaningless if you identify it as a red herring, right? Then there has to be a meaning that you are clarifying is not correct. So it cannot be meaningless if it's a red herring, right? Okay. Then he says, oh yeah, I'll take this as Bernardo Kastrup's writing, right? Okay. The meaning of life has nothing to do with, well, who's talking about meaning of life? Right? Isn't this I'll just have to. Isn't this a? Yeah, you're putting up your own straw man and pulling it down. The meaning of life is who says the meaning of life has anything to do with it, right? It's the choice of communication. It's like no. It has nothing to do with the meaning of life. You over there. It's sort of as if somebody would, is saying that, right? It's not. This is sophist in nature. This kind of lingo, right? I don't like this approach, right? It's not rigid, pure, neutral philosophy argued from a, right? If you're starting up with something like universal subjectivity, right? You might want to help the readers by saying, you might want to go and read this passage in this book or this presentation or that other article, paragraph 6, section whatever, something like that, to understand what I mean by universal. So you are on board with what is being discussed here, right? It's sort of a discussion like this could very quickly feel like it is taking out of a larger discourse context, right? He's trying to put it in a context by talking about using universal subjectivity and refuting the idea of meaning of life and something like that, right? The meaning of life has nothing to do with making free choices. Why not? Right? And Does he mean making free choices as in you don't have free choices? Is he appealing to not having free choices, or is it it's sort of a backward, it's a negated kind of argument, almost starting out by saying this has nothing to do with this. Why don't you concentrate on what you're going to talk about rather than saying I'm not going to, right? I don't like that particularly. Okay. But bearing witness and paying attention to the dance of existence. Oh, dance of existence. Now, we always, when as I've said before, when he gets poetic, dance of existence, it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. And the ladies, they like when you say things like the dance of existence, right? Bearing witness. What is that? The meaning of life has nothing. Okay, so meaning of life has nothing to do with free choices. Okay, that's a statement. But meaning of life then has to do with bearing witness and paying attention to the dance of existence, right? So he says that what he's going to argue now has nothing to do with meaning of life, but he wants to make a definition of what meaning of life is. Why? Why are you hung up on defining the meaning of life? I don't agree with this. This is a bullshit definition, right? In my opinion. It's like if I was going to write an article on how to ride or drive a car, right? And I would say, well, driving a car is not the same as driving a bicycle. A bicycle is driven like this. That would be weird to do in an article about cars, wouldn't it? Just saying. Only when one truly grasps this, okay, so I'm stupid, right? He has to lecture me. I'm probably stupid. So I have to listen. I have to bear witness and pay attention. He's a part of my dance of existence, right? I have to pay attention to the big mind, who's apparently, condensing itself into the supreme leader, Bernardo Kastrup, who I have to pay attention, right? Can one be free in the only true way? The freedom to allow oneself to be what one cannot help but be, and to choose to do what nature demands. Choose to do? Isn't that free will? What do you mean nature demands? What is a demand or commandment? Is that when I bear witness or pay attention? Then I will, there's a demand from nature out there. It calls itself Supreme Leader Bernardo. I have to listen. When I have to grasp this because I'm so stupid, right? This sounds weird. Only when one truly grasps this can one be free in the only true way. The freedom to allow oneself to be what one cannot help but be. Okay. So if I want to be someone who deconstruct philosophy, which would also be Bernardo Kastrup and Essential Foundation's philosophy, if you then come and tell me, no, you can't do that, right? Because, I'm showing it here on the screen, right? Because we don't like what you're doing. We don't like the freedom you are allowing yourself, that you cannot help but be. We have to threaten you with violence. So you have to conform to the executive director, right? The supreme leader, Kastrup, has spoken. So, no, we won't allow you to have freedom to allow yourself to be what you cannot help but be, right? And this is what nature demands of me, because that's what my pure subjectivity, my interpersonal universal subjectivity tells me to do. and I'm allowing myself the free. No. They can't allow my freedom if it inflicts with their ideas of their philosophy having to be inflicted on me, because I have to grasp it, right? It's a conflict of interests now in some way or another, right? Where their philosophy has to be sort of authoritarian, while they tell you, oh, you should just be allowed to be whatever you want to be, right? Of course, unless you find you want the freedom to express yourself about the shortcomings of our philosophy, then we will try to get you shot, right? We don't like that, right? We don't like when you have that kind of freedom. But of course, we will always be spokespersons of, you should have the freedom to allow yourself to be what you cannot help but be, right? It sounds good on paper, but what's going on in reality is more like what I'm showing you on the screen now, right? If you don't obey our shit, we will have you shot in the end, right? By Supreme Leader Kastrup. Okay, then I have removed, let me get back to the screen here. Then I have removed 375 words from the article, and I'll keep going here. Okay, what we thus mean by free will is whether our choices, now there's this our, there's no our choices, right? I don't understand that when you try to refer to this, by our choices, you potentially mean I have choices and you have choices. And if I'm talking about both mine and your choices, I'm saying our choices. But I want to point out that this is a slippery slope of language, right? When it becomes our choices, it starts to sound like some kind of collectivism, right? It's not necessarily meant that way, but those who write it should be aware, must be aware that it might come across that way, right? So it becomes our choices, and when it's ours, when we get into collectivism and socialization and the group, people very quickly disarm themselves and say, I don't want to do anything because it might be against the group. And I have to figure out what is allowed, you're allowed to think here and so on, right? And then the master, the supreme leader, will descend and tell you what you are allowed to think. And thereby you have, totalitarian collectivism, right? In my opinion, Essentia Foundation reeks of totalitarian collectivism, right? Is whether our choices are determined by us as opposed to an external agency. That's not what I mean by free will. And is the choice determined? Because if a choice is determined, then it's what's it called? Not determination. The sort of, okay, the free will or determined, what's it called? Oh my God. Determinist? It is determination, right? If choices are determined, they cannot be choices, right? You could say that I have a choice. Somehow this choice is here. I have an imagination of a choice. But you're not deciding to have the choice. You might not. It might not be your awareness as such that creates the choice. But if you were not threatening me with murder, right? And I didn't come up with a new choice about what to do about it when you sent the threatening email to me where you're going to ultimately have me killed for deconstructing your philosophy, then if I couldn't come up with a new choice, what would I have to do? So you are appealing to me being able to come up with a new choice rather than the one I'm choosing apparently at the moment, right? You wouldn't threaten me if you weren't convinced that I could come up with a new choice of what to do, like cutting down my videos into half size, right? To conform to your threats. Where would those choices come from other than from me? You're not implanting the choice in me by threatening me, right? I have to come up with the choice about what to do based on your threat. This external agency, what is that? Because if everybody has to wait for an external agency, then what is that agency? How does that know how to make choices in me? And no, we have to put it outside in the big mind, right? And when we have, channeled everything out into the big mind, then I no longer have any shackles of direct experience or qualia or everyday experiences. I can go into my fluffy world of the big mind where I can come up with whatever I want, right? That he says, my choices are free if they are determined by me instead of my boss, the weather, the economy. Or what's economy in his ontology, right? Weather? So these are sort of aspects of his experience that he says somehow could be responsible, or he's reflecting on at least to this. But how can his perception be responsible in any way? How can he connect the dots to any kind of will? I don't understand that. Or even the neuronal activity inside my head. What activity? Right? What color does neuronal activity have? What sound does it have? What taste does it have? So this is some kind of scientific abstraction he's talking about. I don't know why do you need to bring this in, right? None of which I think of as myself. Okay, so what? A free choice is not the opposite of a determined choice. But it's not a free choices is an aspect of the idea of free will, but choices are not the free will. Not in the way I would understand it, right? You can create a choice but not act on it, right? I could choose to run naked down the street outside, right? But I don't do it, right? I could create that choice. I can imagine, hey, I could actually throw off all my clothes, run down the street and back, right? But I don't do it. There's a choice, but there's also a choice not to do it, right? It's free will is the ability to imagine an event that involves me performing actions that I might or might not perform. I can also imagine shit that I could not possibly perform, but I would have to try before I sort of would have to maybe accept that it's not going to, materialize, right? If I say, I think I will, go out there and then jump to the moon, right? I can imagine that choice, so to say, right? But it involves something that I will find very unlikely to happen. But I could try, and then I would possibly, from my own judgment, right, or prior experiences, it's not that I try to jump to the moon every other day, right? But about jumping and so on, that it's probably not, I'm not going to succeed, right? But I can imagine it and then say, I'm not going to do it, right? But the will part, I can imagine a choice, but I can not act on it, right? then you are not bringing in your free will. You're not willing anything, right? You're deciding to not adhering to that choice you have that involves you performing some action, right? If I did try to jump to the moon, I would have to bring in what I call free will, which is me acting in accordance with the choice I came up with, right? Whether or not I decided to come up with a choice or not, I don't know. Maybe it's some unconscious part of me that sort of comes from the depths of my mind that I'm not aware of, and then all of a sudden I become aware of it when some subset of my mind, kicks some choice into action, right? But it doesn't mean it comes from somewhere outside me, right? Free will is my ability to act in accordance with a choice, right? And another thing I want to point out about free will is I have never ever found myself in a situation where I try to act without any accordance to a choice. Where I sort of say, why the hell am I doing this, right? What the fuck is this? My arm wants to go. Why is it doing that? Never. There's always a choice involved in all my actions. I have never experienced any time where I have not been in accordance with some choice, right? It's not necessarily because I wanted to do it, right? When Bernardo Kastrup threatened me with murder for criticizing his philosophy as shown here on this slide here, right? It was not like I couldn't imagine myself cutting the videos into half. But it was a choice that was created on behalf of his threatening me with murder, right? So I came up with a choice. It's not like all of a sudden I started to cut the videos down in half and I was saying to myself, what the hell am I doing? I didn't choose this. I did choose it. But it was under threat, right? Just like, the prisoners in the concentration camps during the Nazi era, right? It's not like they didn't choose to go to the cafeteria in Theresienstadt, right? Or whatever it was called, probably not a cafeteria. They chose to do it, but they were forced into a situation where they basically had no other choice, right? So they chose to do it. It's not like they were saying, what the hell am I doing in the cafeteria in Theresienstadt, right? I didn't choose that. They chose it but it was under threat, right? And that's exactly why that Bernardo Kastrup and his ilk there at Essentia, they want to threaten me into submission, right? They want to create such a limited number of choices that I'm going to choose something they want me to choose, right? And act accordingly, using my own free will, right? While they at the same time tell me here that free will is a red herring, right? How fucking corrupt can you be, right? How far did I get in the text? He says, my choices are free if they are determined by me, instead of my boss, the weather, the economy, or even the neuronal activity inside my head, none of which I think of as myself. But neuronal activity is an interpretation of an experience, right? You don't have a sixth sense, or I don't have at least, right? A sixth or seventh sense where impressions of neuronal activity arrive, right? It's based on your experiences. So it's an interpretation of your experiences, right? So what is going on there is actually your experiences and your interpretation of them, right? None of which I think of as myself. A free choice is not the opposite of a determined choice. But is this not a false dichotomy? Isn't this ridiculous? A choice is a choice. If it's there, right? Why are you talking about a free choice? A determined choice. So it's a lot of, okay, where do these choices come from? I don't choose to have a choice. Is that what you're saying? So maybe I should try to discuss, am I choosing to have choices, or are they determined? Are they arriving in me? Are there choices arriving, and maybe from some external agent, right? Woo, 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 right? Okay, I guess that's what he's trying to say, that, okay, so where do these choices come from, right? Are you responsible for your choices, or are they inflicted on you by the big mind, right? A free choice is always determined. What? But determined by that which we identify with. What? What the fuck? And what we identify with is our subjectivity. Don't tell me what I identify with. I don't fucking identify with a subjectivity. There's no our subjectivity, right? Just bear that in mind. I don't know what this is. Too weird for me, right? This sounds like manipulation. Always determined, but determined by that which we identify with. And that we identify is our subjectivity. But what is that? What is that? I don't know what that is. Subjectivity. Is it that I'm aware of my experiences? Is that subjectivity? Why would you want to? Why not just call it awareness or consciousness or something like that? Why does it have to be this very, very abstract term, right? Is it because you cannot create a description of that fantasy outside world you're trying to establish and call it subjectivity? Because if it's not sufficiently abstract, you won't be able to get away with it, right? You will have to get closer and closer to something that I can actually experience. And that would never work when you're trying to describe that which is beyond experiences, right? So what he's trying to say is basically what I'm hearing here, he's going for, is try to connect the dots between that mind at large. The mind at large is, pushing you to do shit, right? You're not choosing. It comes through you, and then it arrives as a choice, and then you say, I have a choice now. That's free will, right? But it's not about the choices, because I don't have to act upon a choice, as I just clarified, right? It's when I start to act that will kicks in. The will is some kind of connection between my imagined choices and how I act in the future in conformity with that choice. Choices, as long as he talks about choices and where choices may come from, it doesn't really matter for free will, right? So he is sort of shooting besides the screen. He's shooting at the target, and he's constantly shooting to the right or to the left of the target, and he thinks he's hitting the target. He doesn't actually understand what he's doing, I think, in my opinion. Choices determined by our subjectivity. Choices determined by our subjectivity are free, while choices determined by agencies outside our subjectivity aren't. Oh man. Oh, this guy is fucking crazy, right? Choices determined by ourselves. How do you know that they're... Well, what is this subjectivity that are determining choices? What do you mean that they're free? Is that in the sense of free will? That you're willing your choices? But that's not what free will is, man. It's not about your choices and how they arrive, right? It doesn't matter because you don't have to act upon your choices, right? So whatever goes on until you have a choice is not about free will. Okay, then I've removed 63 words here. And then we get to free will under objective idealism. Under objective idealism, however, subjectivity is the foundation of reality. Okay, what is reality? Right? And if it's the foundation of reality, can it then be reality? Because then reality is what is perceived, right? And if reality is, if something is foundation to something, then it is not the thing that is foundational to, right? So if you're saying I have an experience, a perception I call reality, then whatever is foundational to it, I cannot have access to, right? So he implies his own violation of his whatever he claims to have access to and using terms to describe, right? He's appealing to some inaccessible thing here, right? In my opinion. It is the one thing that exists irreducibly. And it's sort of this, okay, one ring to rule them all, one mind, there's one thing, there's one God, there's only one. And if you are not with it, you're violating the one thing that is the only thing that you can be, right? I have a very, very, very strong pushback against anybody who talks about there's only one thing. Because then it's the same as saying you're not allowed to be yourself, right? You're not allowed to be different because you cannot be different. There's only one way you can be, and I'm telling you what it is, right? It's this appeal to an inaccessible realm that this apparently super smart brain called Bernardo, your supreme leader Bernardo, can access and then tell you how to do it, right? And how to act. You just have to lay down and be ass raped by this big mind out there who's going to inflict his choices on you, right? It feels very imposing and threatening to me, right? And all it basically is just some crazy mind coming up with shit that he's trying to inflict on somebody else. As if his idea is there's only one thing and you're not in control of your choices. So why is he so concerned about telling me about it, right? It doesn't really matter because I'm going to do whatever I want anyway, right? Or whatever that external mind wants me to do, apparently, right? So why is he so concerned telling me about it if I can't change it anyway? If I don't have free will, why does he need to tell me, right? It's like, it's very important that you listen to me. Okay, listen, you cannot change what you're doing. It's important you understand this. Why? Why do you need to tell me if I can't change it? Right? I mean, why are you just screwing around with me? Are you trying to make me confused and, lose my bearings by telling me it's important that you listen, you use your will, your free will to listen to me? I'm telling you, don't have free will and you can't change what you're doing. So it doesn't matter if you tell me. I can't change it anyway. So you don't need to tell me, right? So why are you writing this long article to tell me about something I can't change anyway, right? Is it just because you consider me so stupid that I would be better off if I understood that I can't do anything. I should just let it flow through me. And then you would sort of, what I see is these people taking advantage of you. You put down your guard in there, say, okay, I can't do anything. I just have to listen to the supreme leader who apparently is in connection with the big mind, and then have to tell me, right? So this is sort of mind control, right? This is authoritarian, mystic mind control of some kind, right? Now, I saw a comment on some guy who recently interviewed Bernardo Kastrup on his channel, some Cypriotic, what is it called? Cyprus guy, never mind. But I wrote a comment, and then somebody else wrote a comment, and they apparently understand that I'm very critical of Bernardo Kastrup and blame me. He must be crazy. There's something wrong with him. He's obsessed with Bernardo Kastrup. Well, maybe to some extent I am obsessed with Bernardo Kastrup, but it's not because I'm fucking crazy. It's because he is fucking crazy, right? It's because of this. Somebody has to push back on this shit, right? It is mentally unstable, this. It's appealing to it. It's trying, just as religion has done through the centuries, right? Trying to take control of weak minds, so to say, right? Create so much confusion in them that they say, okay, I guess I'm too stupid, so I have to listen to the supreme leader, right? That's the approach. And I'm pushing back against this, because this is what brings everything into, it goes to shit every time, right? Either by subduing individuals into some kind of fucking crazy world, right? Then they are then going to inflict on their children. I'm very concerned about children, right? Or they are ending up in weird systems of government, or mass murders, or, whatever shit, right? It's always the disrespect of the individual. You don't have an individuality. It's the big mind speaking through you. You're just a poor little spy for God, and he will suck you dry, and you will disappear into the big subjectivity afterwards. So you're not really very significant. Just pay attention and do what you're told, right? Can you remember anything from history? Can you align or compare to history when you had to align yourself with the big leader, the Führer, the supreme leader? There's only one way to do it, and it is our way or the highway. If you don't do it our way, we might as well just exterminate you, right? Useless eater. I don't like the connotations of this philosophy here, right? Just let me get that straight. Where did I get to? Subjectivity is the foundation of reality. It is the one thing that exists irreducibly. Everything else, all experiential states in nature, are merely, you're just merely something, right? You're just an insignificant little arbitrary bubble of perception and some weird subjectivity, something like that, right? The big mind is important out there, right? It's also, when he's going into these loops of imagination in his philosophy, it would be weird if he came up with the notion that, that external world is less important than your perception, right? Then you might want to say, well, why the hell did you need to go there then, if it's less important? So it has to be more important than your pathetic little experience, right? It always has to be when these people do this. It has to be more important. It's the real light outside the cave of Plato, right? It's the one thing, it's the one mind, it's the one God, it's the important one thing out there, right? And your little pathetic subset of whatever that big thing is not important because it's eternal. The big mind is eternal forever. It's just passing through its own universe. And you're just here sort of temporarily. You cannot possibly be important. So you have to listen to the big mind, the supreme mind, right? Everything else, all experiences, states in nature, are merely patterns of excitation of this fundamental subjectivity. So it vibrates, apparently, right? Just as different musical notes are patterns of vibrations of one and the same guitar. So it's also his philosophy is ripe with metaphors, and not that necessarily that metaphors necessarily is invalid, but you cannot base your thinking on a metaphor. You have to create the thinking, and then if you're trying to explain something you might consider quite hard to understand and maybe being prone to misunderstanding, you might create a metaphor or an analogy or something like that and say, it's something like this I mean. And then you go back into the actual philosophy. But he creates metaphors. Basically, his whole metaphysics is one big metaphor, right? It's ripples, it's patterns, it's subjectivity, it's all kinds of sort of metaphorical shit, right? And it has to be that because he cannot get there. And he understands, possibly, well, I hope so, right? That he cannot get there and describe it because he needs to have his experiences with him in sort of an empirical manner in order to describe it. And then he's still inside his experiences. So he had to base it on some metaphorical, abstract level that is so abstract that it could pass as a description of something that is beyond your mind, right? Under objective idealism, subjectivity is not individual or multiple, but unitary and universal. Subjectivity is not individual. But isn't that the whole idea of subjectivity? You are the subject, I am the subject. Having experiences and being aware of experiences. Isn't that a subjective point of view, right? I know that you have to possibly have the idea of an external world beyond your experiences in order to say, okay, I am a subject. Because what I'm experiencing might be representations of objects, right? I am the subject having the awareness of representations of objects that are inaccessible to me because I only have the experience of them, right? Which is, again, in my opinion, an axiomatic stance. It's an axiom that says I'm treating my experiences as representations of an outside, beyond my experiences, right? But unitary and universal, it's the bottom level of reality. Well, bottom level, are there more levels of reality? What are these levels? If you're saying it's all subjectivity, why are there levels? Are they same levels of subjectivity? Aren't you just creating duality and triality and quadrality or whatever it's called? You're just calling it the same, but treating them as if they're different. I don't like this, right? I feel that I'm being manipulated and screwed around and being sort of, this sort of shell game there where, out pops universal subjectivity, right? Get the break, man. Prior to spatiotemporal, I think it would call, extension and consequent differentiation. The subjectivity in me is the same subjectivity in you. the subjectivity in me is the same subjectivity in you. How do you get to that, right? How do you get to it? That has to be an axiom, right? And if it's an axiom, what do you mean it's the same? If there's a me and there's a you, it cannot be the same. It could maybe be of the same kind, but you're dissociated, aren't you? It's this it's this fabulation about what is going on beyond his own experiences that he should be aware, understand, that he cannot get to, exactly because he has experiences, right? But he wants to tell you what it is, and he wants to connect he wants to make everything the same. So you sort of cannot get away. You cannot have your individualism. You cannot say, I am a subject, right? It's all one subjectivity. So if you're feeling that you're a subject, yeah, but everybody else has the same feeling. So it's basically all the same subjectivity. So you just, there's no you actually. That's just weird little dissociations who all go around thinking they're special, right? But they are not really special because the big mind is the one true, one thing, right? You're not special. You're just a little subset of the big subjectivity, which is basically made all of the same thing, right? And why do we? It's also, let me say that he cannot argue for, and maybe that's correct, but it's the sense that what he does is he goes back into his own philosophy of ontology and metaphysics and says, now I'm going to look at my ontology and say, how would that conform with the idea of free will? And then he says, my ontology tells me that this is how you should understand the idea of free will. So it has become a mantra. It has become dogmatic. It's the dogma that tells you how to understand the rest, right? It's a dogmatic approach to ontology / metaphysics, right? He thinks in this way, I have come up with a metaphysics. Now everything else has to be explained from the point of view of that metaphysics. I like the idea that you have a ground floor, a reduction base, functional reduction base, that everything else in your ontology and your experiences and your definitions of knowledge and moral principles and so on, all can be traced back to, right? But I have to explain my experience to myself in a way that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, I have to go back and challenge my foundations. Is there actually something wrong with my reduction base? That's not what I'm hearing from Bernardo Kastrup. He has come up with the idea of the mind at large, and everything else has to conform with that. That's dogmatic, right? What differentiates us are merely the contents of this subjectivity as experienced by you. Okay, so you are having a little look at the big subjectivity and you think that you're special, right? And me, and by me. We differ only in experienced memories, perspective, and narratives of self, but not in the subjective field, wherein all these memories, perspectives, and narratives of self unfold as patterns of excitation, that is, as experiences. Whatever. As such, under objective idealism, why is he calling it objective idealism, right? Okay, I have highlighted this also. I'll take the whole thing. As such, under objective idealism, there is nothing outside subjectivity. For the whole of existence is reducible to the patterns of excitations of the one universal field of subjectivity. It's this thing that under objective idealism, there's nothing outside subjectivity. I mean, usually objectivity and subjectivity is sort of two sides of the same idea, sort of, right? You might frame it a different way. But these terms, objective, subjective, they are connected with each other somehow, right? So if he says there's nothing outside subjectivity, then he's saying there is only subjectivity. So how can he call it objective idealism? How the hell does that work? Because objective is contrary to subjectivity. And there's nothing outside subjectivity. So he must be in pure subjectivity, to use his own term. So how the fuck can it be objective idealism? I mean, how the fuck does this work, man? Right? You have to be fucking crazy, man. Therefore, all choices are determined by this one subject, as there are no agencies or forces external to it. Yet all choices are indeed determined by the inherent innate dispositions of the subject. In other words, all choices are determined by what subjectivity is. Okay, so he switches from descriptions to there is something out there, and now I'm changing it to the description what it is. It's like saying, I'm experiencing a red apple, so now I can go and tell you what it is. Something like that, right? Why does that follow? It doesn't follow. He's just switching. And that's what is dangerous with this kind of metaphysics, because there is nothing to hold him back, right? There's no checkpoints or anything where you can go and say, okay, now you need to conform to any. No, he can just pull whatever bullshit he wants, right? Come up with all sorts of explanations. And I can only see this as some kind of weird psychology where he wants to cushion his own existence in some explanation that at least give him some clarity of some kind, right? I don't think it's clear. I think it's the opposite of clarity, right? It's self-inflicting dominance on your life to make you, to rid yourself of responsibility for your actions, right? If he wants to go around threaten people like me with murder, right? He has to get rid of responsibility. So then he can say, well, I'm just doing what I'm told by the big mind. It's not me who's threatening you. It's the big mind who's threatening you with violence, right? And threaten you with murder because apparently the big mind doesn't like what you're doing, right? Oh, all choices are determined by this one subject. Okay, so your choices are, I don't agree, but choices arrive by the mere functionality of the big subjectivity. Okay, so there the choices are. That has nothing to do with free will, right? The choices are not free will, right? It's not about willing your choices. It's what are you willing based on those choices, whether or not they arrive from the big mind out there or you're creating in the back of your mind subconsciously or what the hell is going on. Doesn't matter for the idea of free will, right? There's also these people who talk about free won't, which I'm sort of alluding a bit to, right? Just because you have a choice doesn't mean you're acting on it, because there are other choices that may contradict the first choices or some other choices, and you're selecting what you're going to will based on your judgment of these particular choices, right? And you know, when you have sort of an aha moment, right? It can be a situation where you realize a choice that you didn't realize before, and then it's that's a good idea, right? You can also have a smartphone. That choice could be created by bringing all sorts of shit together, and all of a sudden I can choose to have an iPhone, for instance, right? It's what you do when you create the idea of what could possibly be, when human beings inflict themselves on that external world they don't have access to based on their experience of it. Desire versus necessity. But I want to help you see beyond. Oh, you poor little bastard, right? You don't understand the big thing I've been doing here, right? I know you're too stupid to understand, because the big mind, I'm a very good friend with the big mind, and it's telling me what to tell you, right? And you might not understand the big mind as well as I do, because I am so smart. And I also have the papers, right? I went to a Dutch university where I got the papers, so I'm allowed to be smart, right? So you have to listen to me, you poor little bastard, right? I want to help you see beyond this seeming contradiction, whereby there is a sense in which we have free will, but also a sense in which we don't. An Apollonian philosopher as I am, oh yeah. Apollonian is something like, he's very calm and collected and, analytical. It's not based on, emotions or, being passionate. No, it's pure thinking, right? You cannot be emotional, because that's the same as saying you have a bad philosophy, right? I want to leave you with clarity. No, I'm going now, but I want to leave you with this little nugget, right? Not ambiguity. No, because you can handle that cognitive dissonance, you poor little bastard, right? So I have to sit here up on high and talk down to you because I'm so fucking smart, right? And I'm a good friend with a big mind, right? And for that, I need to help you see deeper than these precarious attempts to answer a question that has no meaning. To see instead that the question itself is senseless. Desire and necessity are one. Now, as we've seen above under objective idealism, the one universal subject does what it does because it is what it is. All excitations of the universal field of subjectivity are driven solely by the field's own intrinsic dispositions. Oh yeah, if it wants to ripple, right, it's just going to ripple. There's no first mover here, right? Or the first mover maybe is the big mind, and it can just ripple if it wants to. Don't challenge your little mind with these ripples, because they just appear. If the big mind wants a ripple, it's just going to create a ripple, and there's no thermodynamics or anything that needs to be clarified here, right? It just appears sort of because it does what it does, right? So it's the same as the ways of God are the Christians, God is inexplicable, right? It's everywhere and nowhere and can think everything as infinitely good and infinitely smart, and this fuck off, man, right? All excitations of the universal field of subjectivity are driven solely by the field's own intrinsic dispositions. You won't ever understand the mind of the big mind, right? It is doing what it's doing because it is what it is. Leave it the fuck alone, right? What else could they be driven by? There is nothing external to the field that could impose on it a choice that didn't come out of it. It was in this sense that the field could be said to have free will. So the field has a free will. And that's where the free will is. Because it does what it does because it is what it is. And you're just a sad little ripple somewhere right? However, all of the field's choices, all of its actions, dynamics, excitations are dictated by necessity. Oh, so the big mind has a plan. And you're just there to observe. Pay attention, because you have only been created because the big mind wants somebody to go and spy somewhere in this little corner of the universal subjectivity, and then it will suck you dry when it needs the information you have created, right? Insofar as the universal subject is what it is, it must do what it does. It just can't help it. Oh, man. Oh. I mean, I'm just too anchored in what I call reality to go along with this bullshit, right? He's just sitting there in his freaky mind and coming all up with all sorts of shit he wants to be the case, right? He is creating abstractions and connecting some abstract dots on which he based some new abstractions, and that implies some new dots he connects into some new abstractions, and it just keeps going this way, right? He has left normal human life, human experience, because it's not important to him. He's just paying attention so he can, be sucked dry by the big mind, and the big mind will be satisfied with him, right? It won't punish him for not having paid attention during his, temporary little miserable existence, right? It just can't help it, right? It's like a little, overgrown baby or something like that, right? It's like the King Kong of philosophy or something. It just can't help it, right? The only way to avoid this necessity would be for the field to, be what it isn't, which has no meaning. The field can't help it but be what it is, and thus necessarily do what it does. Why is it so? Why is it that it can only be one thing, right? Why is this? Why can't it change? I mean, he's just coming up with shit, right? It's just a claim. It's completely unfounded in anything, right? Why can't it change? In 5 minutes, it turns into something different. Now it's complete lobby instead of universal subjectivity. So now it's universal lobby, right? So it's different now, right? And now it doesn't have to do what it does, right? Because it's in the future. I'm saying in the future it will become universal lobby. And it won't have to do what it does because it isn't what it isn't. So I can come up with shit, right? No. You're not allowed to think for yourself. You have to pay attention now, right? You have been told to pay attention. You poor little miserable bastard, right? Nonetheless, is the necessity something other than desire? Why do we desire? Speak for yourself, right? Talk about your own desires, please. Well, because we are what we are, and we can't help but be what we are, unless we do something that Essentia Foundation and Bernardo, the supreme leader Bernardo, doesn't like, right? Of course, then you can't help but sending me a threat of murder, right? We can't choose to desire a life in solitary confinement. You might also want, I'm just thinking, right? I started to deconstruct his videos. And after I started doing that, all of a sudden, a choice arrived in him where he had to threaten me with murder. That's an incredible coincidence, right? What if he's just threatened me with murder out of nowhere? Because he had to do it. Why did he actually have to do it exactly when I started to do that, right? I'm the first one in the history of the universe to deconstruct Essential Foundation's videos. And at exactly that moment, those who call themselves the Essential Foundation and Supreme Leader Kastrup, they sent me a personal threat on my life in order to stop me doing it. That's an incredible coincidence, right? No. It has nothing to do with free will or anything. It's just what the mind does. It can't help it, right? We can't choose to desire a life in solitary confinement because that's not consistent with what we are. And there's nothing we can do about it. Our desires are expressions of our intrinsic dispositions. They are determined and therefore necessitated by our very being. I want to eat food I desire, as opposed to other foods. Be with the woman I desire as opposed to other women. Do the job I desire as opposed to other jobs. And so forth. Because I am what I am as opposed to something else. I don't buy that. I'm not saying it's necessarily incorrect as such. It just doesn't say anything, right? It's like why? What is that apple? Well, it's an apple because it is what it is, and it does what it does. It does appleness. Well, you're not explaining anything, right? You're just saying it is what it is because it is what it is. Why the hell would I want that philosophy? I don't fucking care about it, right? If I'm saying, okay, I'm not sure if I want to put apples into my pie, right? I have to understand apples better. Then Bernardo Kastrup comes along and say, well, that apple is an apple because it's an apple. It is what it is, right? And then I say, oh, of course, now I understand why I need to put apples into my pie, right? It doesn't work that way, right? He's basically just juggling words around and arguing in these kinds of circles that doesn't say anything, right? I'm not sure what the hell he's trying to say here. He might be trying to say something, but what he's actually saying and arguing doesn't hold any bearing on anything that I find to be about free will and important about free will, right? He's talking about these choices. But the choice is not the thing, right? If you choose to go to drive your car, it's not the same as you driving the car, right? I can choose this, I can choose that, I can choose the other. Well, that doesn't matter if I'm not acting on it. Right? The free will part is not whether or not you have choices and where they come from. It's your ability to act accordingly to your imagined choices, right? Okay, then I have removed 131 words. But if subjectivity is unitary and universal, there is no inside-outside dichotomy. Okay, that's I have pre-read this article in order to also, put it into half size, right? Maybe I should, so you can read along there. Okay. I noticed this one, right? It might be just my imagination, but he says, but if subjectivity is unitary and universal, there is no inside-outside dichotomy. Now, the term or the expression inside-outside dichotomy, I have used that a lot during the last couple of years to describe the problem of establishing an external world and clarifying and deconstructing, not least, Bernardo Kastrup's philosophy. Now, he's starting to, I don't think he said that before, inside-outside dichotomy. I might be wrong. But I have a sense that he's actually listening to my deconstructions. And he has adopted my description. I've said the inside-outside dichotomy a lot of times during the last couple of years at least, right? This is the first time I remember seeing him using that. So it tells me that he is listening to my deconstructions. That must mean that he is actually taking them seriously. and he's internalizing various aspects of it, right? Okay. Therefore, desire is necessity. And necessity is desire. Then when you no when they start to do this sort of circular argumentation, right? Desire is necessity, and necessity is desire. You are in the hands of a sophist, right? No serious philosopher in the right mind would write stupid shit like, therefore desire is necessity, and necessity is desire, right? Wow, that's fucking smart, right? A desire is a necessity dictated from within, and a necessity is the inexorable outcome of an irresistible desire. So if you want to have, Bernardo Kastrup, the supreme leader, Kastrup, wants to have sex with the neighbor's daughter who is 19, right? He'll just go and have sex with her. He cannot help it, right? There's a necessity. He has to, well, it's a necessity. I have to do it, right? So he can't hold back. He has no free won't. I bet you he has, right? This is what you must try to see, so to realize that the whole discussion about free will is nonsensical. So you're discussing free will. So what you're doing must be nonsensical, right? Oh, under objective idealism. Okay, so you can go outside objective idealism and discuss it and say, it's crazy if you were inside my ontology. Because it cannot be crazy when he does it here in an official article on the Incentia Foundation, right? It's just a weird kind of sophist lingo shit, right? There is no fundamental distinction between necessity and desire. I don't care about necessity and desire. It's like you have moved the goalpost to talk about necessity and desire. I don't care about these abstractions. I care about what is actually going on, right? Because if you are removing free will, right, you are opening all floodgates to anybody basically getting rid of any responsibility for anything, right? While you at the same time really want to give me responsibility for deconstructing Essentia Foundation's course on analytic idealism, for instance, right? So what I'm hearing is somebody wants to get rid of responsibility for his own actions, while he wants to be able to judge others about their actions, but at the same time without having any clear definition of knowledge or any kind of statement about a moral principle, right? I don't buy any of that shit. What the universal subject desires to do is what its intrinsic disposition dictate. Yeah, it has its mind of its own somehow, and it does what it does. You just have to follow along and pay attention. Shut the fuck up, right? Its desires are determined by what it is, and what the universal subject must do is what it desires irresistibly to do. It can't desire otherwise, because its desires too are dictated by what it is, right? So if the big mind wants to ass rape you, right, and force you to do shit, you just have to lay down on your stomach and take it, right? Okay, man, right? Oh, this crazy boy, man. I don't know. I mean, it's like, what the hell kind of, garbage is this, right? A will is about you acting, right? It is, in my opinion, you cannot get to any, look, that is free will. How I approach it is, well, if I am acting, have I ever been in a situation where I didn't have a prior idea of a choice, right? So far within the time frame, I'll get back to that, right? Where I haven't identified the choice that I am conforming to in my actions. I'm not saying that I choose freely to do it, because if I'm making a half size out of my videos because I'm threatening on my life, I'm doing it because I don't want to die. And I have identified the choice to do various things to avoid getting killed, right? But I did realize the choice, and I acted accordingly, right? Have I ever been in a situation where my actions is not in some kind of conformity with a choice? No, my answer would be. I'm always in conformity with a choice, or let's say an imagination of how I could go about doing this, inflicting my own body and so on the world. In conformity with how my choice is imagining that kind of action, right? I'm never in a situation where I say, what the hell are my arms doing? And my legs are, what the hell? I don't have a choice about this. It's just doing whatever. No, never. Never. Right? So if I'm just saying that, why am I always in conformity with choices? And why do some choices seem to arrive when I try to avoid some consequences, maybe, right? In a free won't kind of scenario, right? Where I have a choice and I don't act upon it, right? Because that's possible also. I can have a lot of choices, but I don't act. But I've never been in a situation where I act and I don't have a choice. Never, ever. The exception, it's not an exception, but the special case is when the time frame is very short. I have a gut reaction, or what do you call it, right? Feverish reaction. If something comes flying out of the corner of my eye, I sort of, do this or something like that. I'm not necessarily aware of the choice I create. The mind does it almost in autopilot. But I would say there is a small choice there, right? It's not like afterwards I said, wow, I didn't have a choice there. I did have a choice. It was just created before I could be aware of it, right? Okay. I think that's it. Let me have your comments. Please share, like, subscribe, consider donation, links below. And otherwise, have a nice day. See you in the next one.